Hello and welcome to AFcast. I'm your host Malcolm, and today I'm going to be talking about the new video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's a long title. But a little bit about it is that the developer is Respawn Entertainment, so the same people who made Apex Legends or Titanfall. The engine is the Unreal Engine. The publisher is EA. And the composer or composers for this game was Stephen Barton and Gordy Hobb. The platforms that this game is available on is Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC, and this is an action-adventure video game, and it's a story game. So, yeah, it's also open world for the most part as well. What's cool about the open world aspect about it as well is that you travel between planets, and then on each planet, you're also able to move around how you want to, kind of the same thing in like Borderlands 3, so it's pretty cool. But to get into the story, you are essentially a Jedi named Cal who is hiding from the Empire. And this takes place after Revenge of the Sith, which is the third movie in the prequel, the prequel trilogy or whatever. And essentially this takes place after the Purge, aka when all of the Jedi were killed during the Revenge of the Sith. And so they end up finding you, who you're kind of just like working in a junk area. You're not really trying to be rebellious or anything, but they end up finding out who you are, and you escape with a crew that comes looking for you after intercepting the Empire's message of like you being on that planet. So they rescued you essentially. And due to the events that happen in the Purge, Cal's connection to the Force is damaged, so you slowly have to regain your strength and Force abilities throughout the game. The way they do it is interesting as well. Every time that you remember a Force ability, you essentially go back to when your master originally trained you how to do it, and you are able to like see how he trained you, and you're essentially a younger version of Cal, which is pretty cool. Eventually, you come across a little droid that is called BD1, who helps you during your journey, and I'll give you a couple gameplay aspects when we get into that as well. But you end up going on essentially a scavenger hunt of sorts, and you're trying to find a Jedi holocron that has a list of Force-sensitive children, so you can rebuild the Jedi Order essentially. And you go from one area to another, just getting another clue. Honestly, it feels kind of pointless and annoying. Like, the first planet you go there, and then a hologram of a guy shows up, and he's like, of the guy who's like trying to help you with the scavenger hunts, that's, I'm assuming, is dead. But essentially he's like, oh, these striations means it's this tree on Kashyyyk, so we have to go to Kashyyyk now. And it's really just, it seems kind of stupid, but I don't know. It just seems very strange. But in order to actually progress through the story, there are a lot of puzzles that you have to complete. And the puzzles are really smart and interesting. And they don't always require you to use the Force and stuff like that. Like, sometimes it's just random stuff that you push in or you let happen, essentially. But yeah, your main enemy is obviously the Empire and the Sisters. So the Sisters is like, there's one called the Second Sister that you fight at the very beginning of the game. There's one that is the Ninth Sister that you'll come across as well. And I'm assuming there's a third, fourth, fifth, etc. as well. I'm assuming there's all those sisters. So, but essentially those are your main enemies because they're trying to come after you and kill you because you are still a Jedi that is remaining in the Empire's world, essentially. But yeah. You also can come across Force Echoes, which when you interact with them, it allows you to sense something that is from that object's past, essentially. So this is the collectible system in the game. So you might find like some crappy messed up notebook on the ground, but if you use the Force Echo, if you interact with it, then you're able to see what like it once read or something like that. So it's actually a pretty cool, and apparently not a lot of Jedi have this skill, but it's a pretty cool thing that they've added into the game. Sometimes this is part of the story as well, but not always. So, but yeah, so now to get into the gameplay. So the gameplay consists of a lot of free movement. You're essentially able to climb objects and vines, wall run, mantle stuff, just to get to hard to reach places throughout the campaign or whatnot. And it doesn't always look right. Like sometimes you're wall running really fast, and then all of a sudden, like when you jump off of the wall run, your character kind of slows down mid-air, and it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look proper. But I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, but it just looks weird. But yeah, so to get into lightsaber combat, because you do have a lightsaber from the beginning of the game, you can block blaster bolts. I feel like that would be obvious. Or attacks from lightsabers, and just in general attacks, like if you're fighting an animal, because there are creatures in this game that will attack you. But it wastes a stamina bar that you have. And so if you run out of that stamina bar, you are able to do a dodge, which kind of is like a sidestep type thing. And if you're upgraded enough, you'll actually be able to do a counter attack if you dodge, which is pretty cool. There's also essentially a quick time event. If you block right as something is about to hit you, if it was a blaster bolt, then it will immediately go back to the person who shot it and kill them, or at least damage them. Or if it's like if someone's using a baton of sorts, you can immediately do a parry on it if you block it right as they're about to hit you, and you can do a counter attack on it that easily just kills them, or at least does a lot of damage on them. But it's a free hit essentially, so that's nice. But you are also able to roll, not just do like a sidestep dodge type of thing. But rolling is just like a farther dodge, or if you need to get away or past something, this is a better thing to do. As you play throughout the game, you will unlock new saber combat styles and counters essentially, which is nice. You'll get more attacks like overhead slashes, or like the counter attack that I mentioned, where if you can dodge and do a counter. But yeah, so you'll be able to slowly gain more ways to do combat with your lightsaber, which is pretty nice. You can also knock down enemies to a certain amount of health, where you can start seeing it flashing essentially, and you are able to do an attack on them that is a finishing move of sorts, and it's always badass looking. It always looks really cool. And only thing that sucks is that sometimes a bunch of people are attacking you, and so I feel like it can mess up your rhythm. But that's the only issue I have with that, because enemies don't attack you while you're doing the finishing move, which is nice, or at least you can't be damaged. So it's pretty nice. And then you also, when you are fighting, sometimes blocking and attacking can be really sloppy, and it doesn't always work the way it's intended essentially. I've had a blaster bolt go probably about a foot over my head and still hit me. I'm not really sure how that works. And the same thing when I rejected it back at enemies, I've had it go nowhere close to them, but it still hit them and killed them. I have no idea how that works. It doesn't look proper. I mean, I guess it works the way they intended, but it doesn't look the way they intended. And so it looks very sloppy. And sometimes even if you do counter something and your stamina bar is full, you can still not block some attacks. So it's not always the best. But when it is right and it's going good and the game isn't messing anything up, then it is perfect. So hopefully they'll patch it. And I'm guessing they probably will. It's just annoying right now. So besides just saber combat, you also have force combat. So essentially you have a force bar underneath of your stamina bar. and you can use it to slow objects or people down. So you can actually slow someone down, or if someone shoots a blaster bullet, like a blaster bolt at you, you can actually slow down the blaster bolt and hold it midair. And then you can like grab someone and essentially throw them into their own blaster bolt if you really wanted to. There's also like force pushes, or you're able to grab stuff, like I mentioned. And there's just all sorts of force abilities that you'll end up unlocking. And you'll just have to unlock more and more as you go. And you also this is what I mentioned earlier, but you remember your training as you go, and it suddenly sparks your ability to do that thing, which is kind of dumb in my opinion. But the whole story, like I mentioned earlier, is that, during the purge, like his force powers got messed up, but I don't know, that seems like a very random and quick excuse to think of when it comes to trying to figure out how to slowly gain force powers instead of just having them all at the beginning. But it is what it is. And you can also, in random points in the map, you can find meditation spots. And these are just like little spots that you're able to rest or open up the skill tree. So resting allows you to restore your health, stamina, and force all at the same time, but it also replaces all of the enemies that you've cut through. I don't know. That doesn't really make much sense all the time in my eyes, because sometimes you'll meditate and then like a bunch of stormtroopers will just be around you. Like you'll then have nowhere to go unless you were to cut through the same people who just did. So it doesn't make sense how they didn't see you just meditating there, or how they got there, or what happened essentially. Like it's very random and weird, but once again, it's there, so use it. And then the skill tree, you're also able to do this in just the pause menu. But there's no specific paths that I can really describe. But the more you unlock, the more things that you have available to unlock, like most skill trees. And so basically just unlock some stuff gives you more health, some stuff gives you more stamina, some stuff gives you new saber techniques, just various things for the skill tree. But yeah. And then BD1, the small little robot that is with you all the time, is able to give you health, and it allows you to do other types of movement like ziplining, which is pretty cool as well. And you're also able to find workbenches around the world, and this allows you to actually make your own lightsaber from parts that you've found around the world as well, which is pretty cool. And then also in the pause menu, you're able to change outfits from stuff that you've found, or as you progress through the game, you'll get different types of outfits as well that you're able to change. So overall, in summary for this game, the story was good to start off with, but then it got boring and repetitive, and then it starts to get pretty good again after that. So it's bad in the middle. I mean, it's good. It's really good at the start, bad in the middle, and then it's really good after all that repetitiveness is done with. The gameplay is fun combat-wise, but is sometimes sloppy, and that goes for the game itself just not looking right, or just the actual technique isn't, I don't want to say programmed correctly, but it's not fluent all the time. It delays stuff when it shouldn't be delayed, or sometimes stuff will hit you when it's not supposed to be able to hit you, that type of thing. It doesn't always work. It's sloppy, like I said. So yeah. And sometimes the game doesn't feel like Star Wars. Like sometimes there's just too many factors that don't feel like they belong in that world, essentially. And a lot of the time this isn't true, but there are some circumstances that I've been in while doing my walkthrough that it just doesn't feel like it is a Star Wars game, essentially. Even though I'm holding a lightsaber and using the Force, I don't feel like I'm playing as a Jedi, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of weird like that sometimes. The soundtrack of the game references the original trilogy, and it is overall really good. And I really like that it kind of shows the original trilogy's past with its music and stuff like that. It sounds really nice. And yeah, so they really integrate a lot of that stuff into the game, and that part definitely feels like Star Wars, which is nice. And the graphics in the game are absolutely amazing. And depending on what planet you're on, it looks beautiful because, some planets look terrifying. Not beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. And then the droid BD-1 that's always with you is adorable. I've never adored a droid purely by looks so much before. Like, it is a really adorable droid. I don't even know how to describe it. You'll have to look up BD-1 for yourself, but yeah. But overall, I give this game a 7 out of 10 review. The missing 3 points is just the sloppy combat and the sloppy free movement. But when the game isn't being weird and buggy, because the movement stuff doesn't always just look weird, it also can be buggy. Like, sometimes it's kicked me off of things, or I've jumped in a direction and it jumped in the opposite direction. So that kind of takes down a lot of those points, because sometimes just playing the game would be frustrating. Not to mention that the game got boring for a little bit, and I was having trouble kind of staying with it. Like, not understanding wise, but just like actually wanting to play it wise. So I'd be careful with this game and whether or not you buy it. A lot of other places have given it higher reviews. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff give 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. So I look at what their reviews and stuff were for the game as well. But besides that, make sure you check out our Instagram and Twitter for any updates for AFCast or any of our YouTube channels or anything like that. Also, make sure you check out our Discord. You can either talk to us or others about this game or other games as well. And then also make sure you check out our website, because we host a variety of different YouTube channels and podcasts and streams and whatnot. And then make sure you check out my YouTube channel, because I am posting a walkthrough of this game on my YouTube channel. So if you do want to watch an actual walkthrough of it, then definitely check that out. Also, make sure you check out DJ Augie, because he is the one who made the music for the beginning and end of this podcast. But besides all of that, game on.